So sometimes you want to create a game or a quiz but include a timer in there. And we've all seen the horizontal timers, but this one is a radial timer utilizing or generated using the material graph. The advantages of using this method is if you are critical on space, so we have a 5 megabyte limit here, but in newer versions of Effect House we might have an 8 megabytes limit. It just saves you space, and it, instead of using textures you've downloaded from the internet that might be low res or not look quite sharp, or if you're not too good at using Photoshop or any other graphic software, then this is another way of implementing a radial timer. To use this, we first go and input a screen image. This can be any size. So at the moment it's 720 by 1280. It's best to keep it a cube. So I'm just going to do 500 for now. Because it's a cube, you can use fit or you can use stretch. And we create a new material, a custom material though. So we create an empty custom material and we're just going to name this timer material, just to keep track of it as the project gets bigger. You know, we're going to add more things to the assets section. And we're going to import the radial timer subgraph, which is imported into the material editor. So once you create a custom material, this material editor will pop up. So when you drag it in and it's not responding, just make sure that you are in the material editor. To connect this up, we connect the output of this to the color shader and we give it some UVs. I'm going to use texture coordinates and grab the UVs from there. This is what we need. We also need to assign the material to this screen image. So we go to the screen image, click on material here and select timer material. We see it goes to white, but we need to enable the transparency on this layer. So we go back to the timer material, click on render state in the inspector panel, and under blend mode we click normal, and this makes the radial timer transparent and gives us the true shape. Now we want to animate this, but before we do, just going to run through a few things. So we have this scale which changes the size of the actual timer, so we can put this to 0.3 and we can see it makes it smaller. I'm going to set it back to 0.49. Another way to change the scale is just to change the size or scale of the screen image in the inspector panel. So we can change this size here from 500 to 200, or we can change the scale as well, and that will also change the size of the timer. So I'm just going to undo this. Aspect ratio, we can ignore this for now, but aspect ratio, sometimes we might have to adjust the aspect ratio depending on if we use things other than a square. So if we use 720 dimensions by 1280 dimensions or a 9 by 16 ratio and we use stretch, then this just makes sure that it becomes a circle again. Just to show you an example, if I add another screen image, just got to disable this one we're working on. If I add another screen image and we put this to stretch, but it's using 720 and 1280, and we assign the material to this, you see the circle is more of an oval shape. We have to fix the aspect ratio to make it a circle. So we just set this to 1. It should correct it to a circle. Okay, I'm just going to make this 0 again. and delete this because we don't really need it. UV input is just grabbing the coordinates of the screen image and using that to map our radial timer. The color, this just helps us to change the timer color to whatever we want really. So it could be blue, it could be black, it could be red, any color. The progress, this goes from 0 to 1. This just means that actually if we put 0.2 in, we can see it just moves, it opens up the timer. So the timer starts going from 0 all the way to 1. And if we put 0.9, we can see this little shape here. And CW or CCW means clockwise or counterclockwise. So if we set this to 1, it will flip it round and you will see that the progress starts from the other side. If we flip it to 0, it goes clockwise, so the timer moves in this direction. All these things we can set parameters to them and control them from the visual scripting. So let's do that. I'm going to set this back to just to 0.1 so we can see it's actually working. To set parameters and control this progress, to control the movement from the visual script, we go to the material here, click on the 3 lines, parameters, and click plus on the parameters and set a float. This float, we can call it progress. Once it's set, to convert this to a slider so we can test it out quickly, we can always just enable minimum and enable maximum, set the minimum to 0 and the maximum to 1, and that gives us a slider from 0 to 1. Click on the little dot next to progress and it will add it to the material editor. So progress now we can put into the input here, and if we click on the timer material on the inspector panel, now we can see the progress slider and just play around with it. To change the color from the visual script, we actually can add a parameter. Again, we go to these 3 lines, add a color parameter. We call it timer color. And we click on the little dot next to it and it adds it to our material editor. And we just connect this straight to the input. Again, in the inspector panel, we can see the timer color show up here. This just means that we can, in the visual scripting graph, we can just click on this dot here and we can set or get the color easily. So we're going to do that now. We move over to the visual scripting section, which is just on the left hand side here. And if you double click, it's like a shortcut to bring up the node library, and we just put transit by time. We can use the transit by time or timer or anything that just moves this from 0 to 1. And we want to go from 0 to 1 in, let's say, 4 seconds. And we want that to happen. Just going to move this over here. We want that to happen when we screen tap. To make that happen, we again just make sure that you are clicked on the timer material and make sure you are in the visual scripting section, and then click on the progress, set progress. That adds it to the visual scripting section. Connect the current number to uniform and stay to enter. Now I'm just going to give it a quick test. When we tap the screen, it should start moving. So that is 4 seconds from beginning to end. Okay, so that's done, that looks good. We're now going to try to adjust the color. Because this is going from 0 to 1, we can always just lerp this, which just means that it interpolates it, or it moves it from, put it to step, it moves it from the start to start color to the end color, if we want to do that method. So we change this to color, we can select purple, and it ends in a yellow. We go back to, this is selected already, and we go back to the inspector panel and add set timer color, and add the result here to uniform, and stay, because it's going through here, coming out here, we connect it here. We still see that it's white, so you can either set these values as default in the inspector panel, or you can just use the start node. The start node just sets everything at the beginning to what we have here. Once we click on the screen, we see it changes from purple to yellow. Or if you just want to give it one color, you can just set the color here in the inspector panel, and you can delete this. So essentially that is how to use this subgraph. How to use the timer, it's pretty straightforward. You just set your start and your end, so your from and your to, using your transit by time. If you want it to fill up instead of empty, you can make this 1 and make this 0, so it starts empty and then fills up. And if you test that, you will see it actually fills up this way, so it goes in the opposite direction. Hope this is useful. It would be good to see your projects with this subgraph being used. If it is being used, just tag me and I'll be checking out all the effects using this particular subgraph. Thanks again.